and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. Woohoo! My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who's about to dye his hair pink. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Do I have to go blonde first in order to go pink? Can you go brown to pink?
I don't know. You might have to go in stages.
I guess I'll have to find out.
Yeah. Although, is it purple? Is Megan Rapinoe's hair purple?
No, it's pink. It's pink for
All
sure.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I can't help but notice that you had your haircut today. Yesterday. And then you offered to do things with hair for me. So I feel like you waited until you knew that you were as farthest away from the barber as possible.
Yeah, one of us has to do it, right?
Yeah.
One of us has to do it.
Do we? Is that a rule?
She scored the goals.
All right. She scored the goals.
Yeah.
All right.
So we are
That's
here.
it. That's the end of the show. She scored goals. End of show.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking it. Let's talk USA 2, France 1. The US won the quarter final. Megan Rapinoe with 2 goals. And I'm going to say a lot of questions answered from the US. A lot of the questions we had about the roster, about Jill Ellis, about certain players before the tournament, all of them were answered to this afternoon, our time, and the answer was yes, in the positive for all the US players.
I agree, and I would double down by saying not just the questions we had or concerns we had coming into the tournament, but I would say, at least for me, some of the concerns and questions I had coming out of the Spain game, where I felt like Jill Ellis got some things wrong, made some questionable decisions.
Yeah.
Coming into this game, we thought maybe that was going to be the case again, because obviously Lindsey Horan does not start.
Yeah.
But I think every decision Jill Ellis made, and the adjustments she made, more importantly, were all on point.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about that starting lineup then, because people were not happy, right?
No.
People, or at least people were concerned.
I wasn't happy. I'll raise my hand and say.
Lindsey Horan, regarded as maybe either the best or I would say the most complete midfielder we have, right? She's a defensive force, she's a box-to-box force, and she's a creative force, right? She's a 6, an 8, and a 10. What does that make her? A 24. She's a 24.
Yeah.
Didn't start. Instead, we went with the midfield 3 of Mewis, which is, I guess, the surprise. Julia Ertz in the middle, and Rose Lavelle.
Yeah.
So maybe we can say, in hindsight, why do we think Jill Ellis went with those 3 and not Lindsey Horan?
Yeah, so I think we had this question. My generic answer was more so that basically I think it was a choice between Horan and Lavelle. I think that was probably the way she was looking. Jill Ellis, knowing it was going to be a more physical encounter, she probably only wanted to have maybe one more technical, creative player. Yeah. And I think it was either it's going to be Lavelle, who's going to be technical and creative, Horan, who can maybe do that, not quite as well as Lavelle, but can be more physical. Yeah. And I think she wanted Lavelle in there to kind of create some attacks, to be able to hold the ball, to draw some fouls, and I think also to do some defensive work. We saw her doing that.
Lavelle?
Yeah, like sliding over, covering at times. I think that was part of their game plan, was Lavelle comes over and kind of puts out fires if the situation requires.
I have a different argument.
Sure.
Maybe we'll get into more detail on this, but the job that Tobin Heath did on the right wing, she essentially nullified herself for large parts of the game
100%.
To help Kelly O'Hara with that left-sided threat of Les Sommer and Marjorie. So Heath tracked back a lot and was sort of takes herself out as a creative force.
Yeah.
But then you want on that right side maybe to have Rose Lavelle, because then you have, even if Heath is occupied doing defensive things, Lavelle is still able to maybe provide some creative threat down the right.
Yeah, that
so maybe
makes sense.
it might be about that balance.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And I guess we're maybe jumping ahead here, but I would say I saw a lot of people, especially at halftime, questioning Tobin Heath, wondering what was going on with Tobin Heath's form, because we haven't seen her being Tobinia and going at people and causing problems and drawing fouls. But I think this is the case, and to extend this further, I asked Caitlin Murray about if we might see Carly Lloyd ending up starting this tournament instead of Alex Morgan.
Yeah.
And Caitlin Murray's response was, I doubt it, because Alex Morgan does so much other stuff that Jill Ellis wants her to do, that as long as the U.S. is scoring, Jill Ellis will be fine with it. And I think today was an example of a time when Tobin Heath wasn't focused on the attack, wasn't focused on her game, did exactly what was asked of her, which was drop back, be very defensive, and she did it really well. And it's exemplified by the fact that when she stops doing it in the second half, that's when France start getting chances.
Absolutely, yeah. And so Tobinia has this almost reputation as almost like a freestyle footballer, and everyone thinks if she's not doing step-overs and going past people, then she's not having a good game. But I think the thing I learned today, maybe a question that's answered, is she also has this ruthless competitiveness, which I think is the hallmark of this US team, and that's what makes them so good more than anything else. And part of that is that she's willing to work back and do the defensive job.
Yes.
All right, going back to that starting midfield 3, there's also an argument that maybe you would expect Lindsey Horan to start over Sam Mewis, because the 3 coming into the tournament we were expected was Ertz, Lavelle, Horan, right? Yeah. I would argue Sam Mewis, I don't even have to argue this, Sam Mewis is the tallest player on the US team.
Yeah, that had not...
5'11".
That had not occurred to me, both the height and the role that her height would play.
Yep.
But you were absolutely correct that she didn't end up marking, or maybe she was marking Wendy Renard. Wendy Renard was not marking her.
I think a couple of times, sometimes it was Ertz marking Renard.
Yeah. But it was Sam Ewis on a couple of different occasions, especially in the second half, being the one to not just win the headed ball when the ball is served into the box, but win it with that emphatic headed clearance that you want to see when it goes 30 yards back up the field, and you just know the pressure is gone, at least for the moment.
Yep. And here's my other argument for the starting midfield three. Jill Ellis watches these players in practice, right? Sure. She might be thinking, hey, these three look sharp. Haran maybe is a little bit behind the three of them right now. They're in form. I'm going to pick them, right? And I really think there's a thing where people just want their favourite players to play, and you can make the argument for Haran. But there's things you don't know, right? There's things we don't know. Jill Ellis has been watching these players in practice. She feels that these three are the sharpest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I had concerns about that, and I think I was kind of doing I'm not there, but I still think it should be Haran, and I think you're right that it's hard to make that argument, and Haran does eventually come in the second half, and it feels like a pre-planned substitution, and it has a big impact.
Right? Yep. Maybe we'll get into the details of that later as we go through the game, but Haran's introduction is the perfect timing and the perfect use of Haran.
Yeah.
It kind of works, right? So you don't have to be in the starting 11 to be effective. I've got one more big argument for you, though. The other thing about this starting midfield is a way of getting Mewis, Haran and Lavelle to all start at the same time will be to move Julia back from defensive midfield to centre-back and drop Becky Sauerbrunn. I saw plenty of people saying that's what I would have done. That would have been my starting lineup. I think, again, Becky Sauerbrunn had the type of game today that proves why she absolutely has to be there.
Yeah, because it's about chemistry and defending as a unit a lot of times, especially in the knockout round. And there was one in the second half where they're defending a cross in from France, and I think it's a free kick that gets played back, and there's a little bit of possession, and then eventually the cross comes in. And I watched it repeatedly, and that back line drops back a yard together. They step forward a yard together. Yep. And there's not one person necessarily who's screaming at them all to do it. They all seem to be keying on Becky Sauerbrunn that when she steps up, they move with her. But it just stood out to me because they're all so clearly in lockstep of where to move and how to move in relation to each other. Yeah, but if you then drop
the twins in The Shining, but four of them.
Exactly. And slightly less creepy, I would say.
A lot less creepy.
Yes. Less murdery to some. Maybe to a few French attackers. But I just say that to say that, to your point, but if you take out Julie Ertz, maybe she's going to be dominant in the air. She's going to be Julie Ertz. She's going to be a great leader. But do you lose a little bit of that chemistry and the kind of awareness of where the other one is without even having to think about it? I think you probably do.
And what we're getting around to is Jill Ellis got this lineup right.
She did.
Right? A lot of people owe her an apology.
Yeah. Yes and no. I think depending on your level of criticism, because I do think she made mistakes in Spain. I don't think that one good result means that the other thing didn't happen. It may be that she learned from it or adjusted to it or the players got better or performed better in their roles this time. But I think she made mistakes against France or against Spain.
Yeah.
Not less so against France, for sure.
I mean, really?
Yeah.
Right? There's maybe one, but she fixed it.
Things can be two things, my friend. Things can be two things.
Things.
Before we move too far forward, though, because I want to go back to the lineups and the approaches for a second, because we haven't even talked about France, and we weren't sure if France would go 4-4-2, if they would go 4-3-3 or something like a 4-2-3-1.
You guessed the 4-2-3-1.
I did.
And you got it right. I think you got the lineup exactly right. You kind of named it on our show.
I did, except that I named what I thought they would do, and then I think I also named what I think they should have done, and they did not do what I think they should have done, which is my way of saying that clearly if France had listened to me, they would have won this game. But it did seem like they put out a lineup that was going to be fast and aggressive attacking the United States, especially in the channels. And so my question in the lead up was, so do you start Gauvin, who is a very good striker, is physical and tall and will be the kind of battler in the box.
She's a target striker, right?
She's a target striker, but is that what you need if you're trying to go fast and creative? And I think the fact that she's France's first substitution and had not much of an impact in this game, I think it shows that I think if they went a little bit more mobile up there and had a bit more interchange and movement off the ball than having a target striker, I think they might have been a little bit more dangerous.
Yeah.
But I sort of was happy to see them in that 4-2-3-1 because that felt more like for like matching the United States, and I think made me feel just a little bit more like the United States could handle that a bit more than having to adjust their entire shape.
Well, in terms of how the game played out, it seems that France's attack was mostly getting crosses into the box when they could, and Gauvin got to a couple of them, Le Sommer got to a couple of them, but we're talking about headers from 10, 12 yards away, and literally Alyssa Naya
can well past the back post,
like too wide, but the angle's no good, or Alyssa Naya just catches it or tips it over the bar. Literally there's one where she dives and catches it, right? So I think France were really limited to just going for crosses, and Govan and Lassamere getting kind of tame headers at the US goal.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think a big part of that, again, is because you have players like Tobin Heath, who usually would be staying further forward. Instead, they dropped in. Megan Rapinoe did stay further forward, and I think that was a sort of, she's your outlet that can then play it to Alex Morgan, and you can get those quick counterattacks. But I think the United States sitting in a bit more definitely worked. That said, we had some moments where we were a little bit concerned about Crystal Dunn.
Yeah.
And I think she had about as good of a game as I could have hoped for from Crystal Dunn.
Absolutely, because, do you mind getting into this now? The tactical element, right? So Tobin Heath was staying deep and defending because of the Marjorie attacking left back overlap on the one side. On the other side, it seemed like almost to balance that out, Megan Rapinoe stayed high, right? Well, did not get involved in defending. And not because she's lazy, not because she doesn't want to. It looks like an instruction, right? Like if we're going to sacrifice Heath, we're not going to also sacrifice Rapinoe because then we're just defending from the start. I mean, and
you could... Sorry to interject, but you could see it. We had the tactical cam on as well.
Yeah.
And there were those
Eventually,
moments...
we had a tactical cam on.
Yeah, thanks, Fox.
Yeah.
But you can tell when a player is sort of like jogging back, walking back, not quite as focused on their defensive job, versus Megan Rapinoe would sprint back or go like 80% like sprint back to get into the space where she needed to be, but would then stop and hold up. And so to your point...
Oh, so she was there to receive the ball when we countered.
She was,
yeah. That's as far back as she would come, was like to make the outlet pass easy, right? So she doesn't come back and defend. She doesn't never tracks Torrent, the right back, all the way back, like Heath was doing to Marjorie on the other side.
Not until like end of the game, desperation time. But aside from that, no. And so I say that just to say that it wasn't even like she was maybe just like kind of switching off or whatever. It was she would drop back and then be in the exact spot she needed to be that outlet, and then everybody could play off of that.
But the knock-on effect of that is that Crystal Dunn is left either 1v1 versus Gianni, who's super dangerous
at best of times,
or 2v1 with Torrent joining, so Torrent and Gianni going up against Crystal Dunn. And in terms of what I said at the top of the show about like we had some questions and they were answered, one of the questions was, it's great to have Crystal Dunn as a left back because it means we have one extra super attacking player in the field and she can join the attack and she can, do what she's best at, which is join the attack and be Crystal Dunn. But we had concerns when she comes up against elite right wingers and right backs and people going at her, how does she cope? And the answer is magnificently.
What do you mean? Because I might take a little, I might disagree with you a little bit on that one.
I mean, maybe she got beat once or twice, but then she would get beat and she would scramble back and get in position to block the cross or make it really hard, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
The only time France actually got crosses in is when they overloaded it and Dunn would stay with Gianni all the way, but no one would mark Torrent, and then so Gianni could drop it back to Torrent, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and the only time France managed to get a sort of through ball along the ground, do you remember that? They broke open the middle and Gianni was sort of in on goal. Crystal Dunn was there with a sliding block tackle. I think Crystal Dunn coped magnificently against a really, really tough opponent or opponents.
Two things there. First, I think you're right. I think that I'm remembering the kind of looming threat of that French right side throughout that first half, and how often, because I think Crystal Dunn on the US backline were trying to stay kind of compact in front of goal or narrow in front of goal. So she usually had to then sprint like 20 yards out wide to deal with Gianni. So I think I remember that and thinking...
Because there were moments we would get tense when that would happen, right? I remember those moments. Yeah, I'm only just now relaxing.
But that's not really her. That's like she's doing what she's been asked to do. Again, you can't really criticize her for doing or like playing the role the way she's been asked.
Yeah,
and then
it'd be like criticising Tobin Heath for not being creative enough when she's doing a defensive job.
There we are.
Yeah.
But to your other point, which I think is very useful, is that you're right that even when she was maybe like a little because of the system, what the system required, if she was 15 yards away when the ball went to Gianni, you're right that Crystal Dunn always ended up harassing Gianni to some extent. She made her life difficult, even if it meant that she had to like cut down the end line and maybe get past Crystal Dunn because the slide tackle didn't quite come off. She still then has to kill her angle and sprint and adjust and exert energy. And now when she is able to cross that ball, another defender has slid in front of her, so now she has to either get past that player or end up just firing it in and it doesn't quite come off.
Yep. So big check mark next to can Crystal Dunn defend. Like it might look a little scary, but that's because she's up against a scary opponent and came out, I would argue, on top.
I would agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we get to the goal?
Yeah, probably.
The early goal, because it happens really early in the game, and it probably does end up shaping the game a little bit, right?
Yes.
So it's a Megan Rapinoe free kick in the 5th minute that goes straight in.
It is. And I want to give Megan Rapinoe credit for that, but I also want to give her credit for the free kick happening like itself, because the United States get a throw in around midfield.
Yeah.
Rapinoe takes it, has the awareness to throw very long and put the ball in the right spot, that it's basically Alex Morgan versus Griessenbach. And Alex Morgan is goal side and is probably Bayernbach, and that's why she has to really just very obviously bring down Alex Morgan.
Yeah.
So it's a free kick there.
Is that where Mbach gets her yellow?
It is. And I also think that maybe explains a little bit of why she wasn't quite as aggressive in going for some challenges and trying to meet the ball maybe as aggressively as
she
we've
only
seen.
wants the one yellow, not
there
the
it
second
is.
one.
Yeah. So it's good awareness from Megan Rapinoe to launch that ball on the field, and it's good work from Alex Morgan. Again, not getting the goals, but doing work to put her team in a position to get a goal.
I mean, she's very involved in the second goal, right?
This is true.
We'll talk about later. All right, so the free kick itself.
This is fascinating, this whole goal.
I was personally really excited for us, the Total Soccer Show, because we talked a lot in our preview about when you're facing France, we recommend don't cross balls in high. Wendy Renard will head them clear.
She will.
Go low and you might cause them some trouble because we've seen this in the past. Aim low. Yeah, don't be Michelle Obama. Aim low. If they go high, we go low. And that's what happens, right? Rapinoe fires it in low. It's meant, I think, for Ertz to meet it at the near post and flick it on or flick it at goal. And I think for Lavelle to be at the back post, because you see Lavelle sneaks around to the back post, but instead it just causes so much confusion. I think it goes through Amandine Henry's legs and beyond Bouhaddi. It's 1-0 USA, Rapinoe with the goal.
It is indeed. Two things there. The first, I would say that it's maybe aimed for Julie Ertz, and maybe she's supposed to flick it on, but if nothing else, I think she's an agent of chaos in this scenario. She just goes flying into this one, and I think if you're trying to defend her but make a play on the ball, but also be aware of your positioning, and you've got this player who's very good in the air and can obviously score a goal just charging into the box, you might lose a little bit of focus and pay attention to her. But I also think that we didn't have Wendy Renard marking Sam Mewis in this sequence. We had Amandine Henry, who is significantly smaller than Sam Mewis, and I think that matters to me because Henry is goal side of Mewis, but trying to sort of body her off and using the sort of forearm, which isn't really legal, but it's not totally illegal to like keep
It's not
position.
illegal, but it's never called.
It's not. And so, but because of that, she's sort of trying to body Sam Mewis, but can't do it. And Sam Mewis starts moving towards the goal, and Henry is backing up, and I think gets a little bit of a nudge from Sam Mewis right as the ball
she nudges her right at the last
served
second,
in.
right?
But I think because she's so focused on Sam Mewis and trying to defend that, Henry isn't really focused on the ball. And by the time she recognizes what's happening, she's kind of been knocked into a situation where she gets nutmegged with the ball going in.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this is obviously very similar to the early goal against Spain, not from a free kick, but from a corner kick. This one, Rapinoe fires in low, but Mewis gets a touch to it at the near post? Someone gets a touch to it at the near post.
Somebody does, probably.
But so it's a similar, it's a pattern that the US Women's National Team, it's one of their set piece routines. Basically, is fire it in low to the near post, have someone flick it across goal. That will cause chaos, and it's worked twice in 2 knockout round games.
It has.
So that's not a bad record for like your set pieces working at a World Cup.
Not so bad. No, I think it was Stephen Goff pointed out on Twitter. I don't have the exact minutes in front of me. I jotted them down from memory. But I think so far in this World Cup, the United States has scored in like the 3rd minute, the 7th, the 11th, the 13th, and the 5th, or something like that. They score early. I think the strategy there.
Do you think the goal impacts how the US plays for the rest of the first half?
Yes, I do.
It's going to, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase the question. In what way does the US scoring early impact how the US plays for the rest of the first half?
Because I think they can back off now. And I don't mean just like take their foot off the gas, relax. But I think, like my wife texted me about 20 minutes in and was like, why is the United States not pressuring them? Why aren't they kind of going at them? And I think it's because...
Or not even pressing when France have the ball,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
But I think it's because all the pressure's on France now. And they have to make something happen. So the United States can sit in, focus on holding their shape, not giving up opportunities, and then... France eventually get frustrated and commit numbers forward, and then you have opportunities to break, and that's why I think we had Rapinoe and Morgan taking the defensive attacking positions that they did, if that makes any sense. And I think that's a big part of it. And you could see the one that stands out to me is to start the second half, I think it was, Julie Ertz, there's one moment when she gets pulled out a little bit. She goes to track a ball, and I think Rose Lavelle goes with her, and one of them was supposed to stay, and they have a quick conversation. Julie Ertz comes flying back to try to get into the right spot, but it's a ball to Tine. She turns and plays in Gianni, and that's the one you mentioned.
Oh, this is the Crystal Dunn tackle.
When Crystal Dunn.
Game-saving tackle. That could have been the equalizer.
But I say that to say that like it's worth remembering that that's how good this France team is. They are that quality of a team that if you mess up and you give them time and space, they will find those opportunities, and they almost did. So I think the United States' focus became deny them space,
especially in the middle,
exactly,
right? Maybe push them wide, and they can try some crosses in, but we'll probably win them.
And then also because you can sit back a little bit deeper, you can slow France down. And we were really focused on Mel Majri, the left back for France coming into this game. I think the United States was as well.
And the Heath plan, right?
And we had a few people ask us, like, why did she have such a bad game? Why were you all so scared of her? And again, it's similar to the Tobin Heath thing of like, Tobin Heath didn't just play defense, like she was told to do that. And I think the United States strategy of sitting back and getting getting numbers and then making the crosses difficult, it frustrated Amel Majri to the extent that I think twice near the end of the game she passes the ball straight out of bounds because she doesn't have time and space.
Yeah, it doesn't mean she's not talented. It means we nullified her.
Exactly.
It's almost as if Jill Ellis knows what she's doing. All right, so it's half time. Like we're doing the chronology of the game here. It's half time. Seems like we should have an ad break.
All right.
That's what everybody does at half time.
That seems like a good idea.
Today's show is sponsored by FBref, our friends at fbref.com. They, of course, have all kinds of Women's World Cup stats, as we've mentioned. They also get the game stats up really quickly after each game. I know this because I've pulled up USA versus France.
All right.
I've got some stats from this game.
Were there goals in that one?
There were goals. Okay. It was 2-1 to the US.
So they give you that stat?
They do give you that stat. They give you much more, though. Here's one. We talked about how Becky Sauerbrunn was leading the offside line. France were offside twice as many times as the United States.
Yes.
Plus, there's that one goal where I don't think we were offside. So I'm going to say it should actually be even less.
That was real close. Real close.
She was a toe offside. Right? Crystal Dome was a toe offside.
It's okay. I think Carmen Clay was made up for by the no-call handball later at the end of the game.
We will talk about that. So France were offside 6 times. US were offside 3 times. We caught them 6 times. Yep.
Yeah. What does it say about possession? I haven't seen the possession stats in there. I'm curious.
I saw it on here. I've just got to find it.
Because it feels like it might have been France, but it might have been France with less significant possession.
61% France, 39% United States. Here's a very telling stat. Shots on target. All right. France shots 5 out of 20 shots were on target.
Man, I'm actually surprised it's that high because I don't remember the scenario
as high as 5.
I think I remember a couple that went sort of right to her but seemed terrifying in the moment because it was in the moment. But
okay.
Well done on the
But a lot of them were headed just wide or just over, right? United States, are you ready for this? I'm shocked by this.
Efficiency?
8 out of 10 shots on target.
There you go.
80% of shots on target. If that's a striker, you're the best striker in the world. Like a good strike rate is 50% of your shots on target.
This is.
You think that Sam Mewis strike early in the second half. I think Jill Ellis has a strike in the first half. All these top of the box shots on target.
Yeah. I think they did some Mighty Ducks training and they basically just focused on cleaning up the trash so that in between the games they went from having no shots on target or 2 shots on target and 2 goals and that's it to having a bunch of shots on target. There you go. Well done USA. Well done to adjust.
I think that tells a story of the ruthlessness of the US in this game. We've also got. I love these stats. I love that FBref have these tackles and interceptions because I think those are good stats for who did what.
It is telling to me that I genuinely have no idea who had the most successful tackles in this game. I think I could make a guess, but I might totally be wrong. And I say that because it could be 6 different players for the United States.
Who do you think it is?
Jill Ellis.
It's Crystal Dunn.
That's my second choice.
Crystal Dunn with 4 tackles, 1 interception.
All right.
Sam Mewis not far behind, 3 tackles. So she had it seems like a good defensive game. I don't remember these tackles, but they definitely happened if FBref has them.
All right. Did Julie Ertz get one of each category for defensive stats? Is there 1 interception, 1 block, 1 tackle, 1 clearance?
1 tackle, 2 interceptions.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
And Sauerbrunn matches her, leading for interceptions. 2 interceptions for Becky Sauerbrunn as well. I can remember her stepping out a few times and winning balls.
Why don't we call Becky Sauerbrunn the Braid, by the way? I feel like we should call her the Braid.
We should? All right.
Yeah. Okay. The Braid.
And the US team is the Brady Bunch?
Boo. Unacceptable. But you know what is acceptable?
What's that?
The statistics available at fbref.com.
They sure are. So yeah, if you'd like to see for yourself, the link will be in the show notes or go to fbref.com. I also recommend the newsletter, Stathead. You can click on the nav bar at fbref.com and find, you can subscribe to Stathead, the newsletter.
So
Thank you to FBref for sponsoring today's show. I was the one being polite this time.
Thank you so much to FBref for sponsoring today's show and giving us the privilege and honor of discussing their statistics on our program. Let's talk second half because I have a theory about what the United States tried to do coming out for the second half, and I think it briefly worked and then caused problems.
All right, what's your theory, Professor Taylor?
Thank you. First of all, for giving me my proper title.
Finally, right?
Yes. I am Professor Dr. Taylor. Thank you. But I think basically the United States thought we sat off at the end of the first half. We frustrated France. We invited them to come at us. And I think if that's the kind of momentum of the game, it can be really difficult if you're that attacking side to suddenly kind of get hit and have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And I think we saw the United States come out with a game plan of let's be really aggressive and let's try to get one early to start the second half.
Unleash the Heath.
There it is.
That's what we did second half, right?
It is.
She stopped doing that tracking back thing as much, and Heath stayed high and went for it. And Rapinoe didn't compensate by being more defensive on the other side.
She did not. And I think here that I know how ludicrously obvious this is about to sound, but I really do think that the United States has the goal of scoring very early in either half.
Yeah.
And I know the goal of soccer is to score as quickly as you can, but it seems like the U.S. really see those first kind of 5 to 10 minutes as an opportunity to go at your opponent, make something happen, and then if it doesn't, sit off a little bit and see what happens.
Let's go get them.
Yeah.
That's the start of the second half is let's go get them.
Yeah.
Doesn't it the first possession...
First 5 minutes, I think, of the second half, it's the U.S. gets 2 corners, I think, and really start to get some chances.
There's that newest shot that I think is a pretty good strike, right? I think Buhadi has to tip it around the post.
She tips it, and then Tobin Heath is there to get the rebound, and Buhadi has to slide across. And then it either goes wide or she pushes it wide for a corner.
I think it's one of the many shots on target from the United States.
There we go. Yeah, but to your point, that requires Tobin Heath or allows Tobin Heath to stay further forward, and we started to see, instead of it being defensively, Alex Morgan at midfield, Megan Rapinoe drop back somewhat, but maybe 20 yards closer to the U.S.'s goal, and then Tobin Heath all the way back.
Yeah.
Now
Tobin Heath double right back in. She's not doing that anymore.
No, now we just see a front 3. And they stayed that way, and I think that's when the United States really started to have problems, because then suddenly if, say, France came down their left side, the United States is right, now suddenly it's just Kelly O'Hara, almost a 3v1 at times.
And sometimes you have Rose Lavelle, she's the right centre mid, would come over and help Kelly O'Hara. But even when she does that, that means then we only have 2 central midfielders left, right? Because the benefit of he's doing it is you still keep 3 in the middle. So suddenly there's a bit more space in the middle, and Tine can get a bit more involved.
Yep.
So it's really a rough 15 minutes, right?
It is.
Well, I'd say the first 5 is good for the US because we're on the front foot.
Yeah.
Then there's a rough 10 minutes where it really felt possible that France could equalise.
Yeah, and it's in the moment, it felt sort of like the United States is besieged, and this is definitely going to be a goal France need to do, or the United States needs to do something. Jill Ellis does eventually change it, but even going back and watching, the chances in there are not. There still aren't a combination quick pass through the middle, and it's a 1v1 that Alyssa Nair somehow saves. It's still, I would say, fairly low percentage chances. It's just that once France start getting more and more opportunities, eventually they're going to be a little bit calmer, a little bit more poised in front of goal, and then instead of it being a shot wide, it's a shot in the back of the net.
And the thing is, a good coach who's not afraid to make big decisions would probably do something like change the formation at this point and sort of change the shape of the game.
Yes, and that's exactly what happens.
That's what Jill Ellis, World Cup winning coach Jill Ellis did.
Yes, and I mean, worth noting.
I'm really making the case here.
That's fair, but it's also worth noting that, again, if we talk about Jill Ellis the way we talk about a coach like Mauricio Pochettino, who we loved for Spurs this season, especially in the Champions League, for making 2 and 3 changes to the approach.
Yeah, as looking at the game and being okay, here's the problem, here's my fix, everything's better.
And look at this game. I mean, the United States comes out aggressively, gets an early goal again, change the approach, sit back, frustrate, come out in the second half, be aggressive, then it starts to not work, change the formation and sit back and get everybody behind the ball, but still knowing exactly what's being asked of them, so it's not a lot of just kind of last-ditch flying around defending. Yep. I mean, that's 1, 2, 3 changes? 4 changes? Yep. 4 big changes made by Jill Ellis.
Let's talk about this formation change then. So we go from the 4-3-3
3 changes.
To a 5-4-1. So Julie Ertz...
How do you know, though?
Because I heard Jill Ellis yell it.
Is it because she held up 5-4-1?
Yeah, and she was yelling from the bench, right? And the US I was really impressed with how quickly the US adjusted. It's obviously something that they've worked on at some point so they can get straight into it, right? Yes. There's no confusion about who does what. So Julie Ertz leaves central midfield, just becomes a third centre-back, right? So suddenly you have, I think Ertz stays central, right? Then Sauerbrunn and Dahlkemper to her sides. And you still have the fullbacks, Dunn and O'Hara. But the big thing is the fullbacks aren't tight with the back 4. They're allowed to be a little bit wider, which means France don't even have the space to begin to get down the wing. There's already Dunn or O'Hara ready to be there. And this is the really important thing, I think. Those fullbacks are freer to step out and win things higher. Yes, if they know there's a load more defenders behind them, Dunn can take the risk of, I can get to that pass, I can charge 10 yards and get there and not be worried that I've left the entire side open.
I would extend that even to say that she doesn't even have to charge 10 yards anymore because now it's 5 yards because they're that much more spread out. That I think is the other thing as to why.
Because there's 5 of them, so you're not really spread out. You're just covering more ground with more people, right? Yeah.
But I think also that's why you started to see Eugene Le Sommer on the left for France, but then left back Majri. You started to see them struggle even more because now Majri has been used to this whole game having time and space out wide and eventually getting pressure, and you do get used to that. You get used to having a couple seconds.
Easy first touch.
Yeah, easy first touch. Pick your head up, take another touch, cross the ball in. Yeah. But now if Kelly O'Hara is 5 or 10 yards closer to you,
and there's
that much more pressure, and also at the end of the first half was literally in Majri's face, I believe it was, when she crushed her. But then it does make it harder, and I think, again, that's why you start to see France get a little bit sloppier and struggle to kind of maintain possession at times out wide because of that adjustment, which is then like Jill Ellis doubles down on a smart change by making a smart substitution. She goes to a 5-4-1 on the 59th, 63rd, which I think is about the earliest she could have made that change because she has to call Lindsey Horan back, give Lindsey Horan instructions.
I saw Lindsey Horan warming up, running up and down the line as Jill Ellis was calling the 5-4-1. So obviously the introduction of Horan is part of the switch to the 5-4-1. Right? It just takes a few minutes, like you said, to get her in there. Yeah,
because you got to wait for the ball to go to bounds and everything. But the thing that I love the most about it, aside from Lindsey Horan now being in the game, and I love Lindsey Horan, is that the first thing she does is call, I think like maybe 5 players over, and there's a huddle,
comes on,
and you can see her like pointing at a player. You do this. You're doing this now. You're doing this now, and everybody sort of nods and agrees, and they go to their spots. And again,
I wish meetings at places I've worked were that
be very helpful. Yes, unless you're in a dictatorship, in which case less so. But here,
I mean, I was, but there were still long meetings.
Yeah, that checks out. But here, it's everybody again. It's the rehearsed like way that the United States play indicates how much practice they've had, that everybody immediately knows what their role is. Megan Rapinoe becomes a left midfielder. Toby Heath becomes a right midfielder. Now you've got Sam Ewis and Lindsey Horan in the middle. You've got the 3 center backs behind them. And suddenly, very difficult for France to find a way through.
And it's the right change, right? Because Lavelle is the least defensive of the midfielders. So to suddenly have like a 2-player central midfield of Ewis and Lavelle, there's kind of a weak link there, right? Not in terms of technique or anything, but just in terms of defensive strength. So to replace Lavelle with Horan is a massive upgrade, and Mewis and Horan makes sense for a long time as those 2 centre mids, right? And I think doesn't eventually Mewis gets a bit tired and Lloyd comes in? That is also fine.
That's fine with me too. I have a question for you though. That's kind of off topic, but I just remembered it here. The commentators talked about near the end of the game how Jill Ellis had said that France don't want the ball, so we want them to have the ball, which explains the possession stat. But do you agree with that? Like, why?
No, you know I mostly don't agree with JP Delican.
Okay, cool. I was surprised by that because I understand maybe like giving France the ball. I just don't know why you would want France to have the ball more.
I think a lot of stuff is the commentators will take one quote and then extrapolate their own sort of narrative from it. That does, and I think they take a wrong turn at some point.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair.
That's the kindest way I can say.
Yeah, they missed 1 or 2 things. We'll talk about that in a second. Because first we have to talk about the USA's second goal.
Oh yeah, because
here is where everybody who I saw tweeting Tobin Heath is terrible, Tobin Heath is no longer good, had to then say, all right, Tobin Heath's maybe still good. Yeah. And same for Alex Morgan.
Yep. So it's Rapinoe who gets the goal, but this really is all about the interchange between Morgan and Heath under pressure, the way they're able to essentially work France's midfield and defence in the space of what? It's not a 1-2 if you both touch it 2 times,
It's a double 1-2.
It's a double 1-2.
I don't know what it is, but it's a clearance.
A 2-4?
Yeah, it's a clearance from Kelly O'Hara, I think, off a U.S. throw. It gets dropped back. She clears it. It's a little bit like it's to Alex Morgan, but it's not Alex Morgan clean because it's Alex Morgan under pressure from, I believe, Wendy Renard has her.
Again, she does really well to like receive balls under pressure. Like in a way, she didn't against Spain, but she's doing it really well against France.
And she got knocked down a good number of times in this game as well. And I think she anticipated getting knocked down, but was still able to hold it up. So it's Morgan settles, plays it to Heath. Heath plays it back to Morgan. Morgan cuts inside and then plays Heath in for the driven ball. Heath plays it back across for eventually Rapinoe. But it's like, so it goes Morgan, Heath, Rapinoe. I like that combo.
And they both have like good little moments, like clever moments of manipulating space within there, right? Like, so for example, when Heath gives Morgan the ball, doesn't Morgan like cut inside away from Wendy Renard just to avoid the best defender?
But across the path of Amel Majri,
across the path of Majri, so she got a step. But then another is it Busalia has to try and come over in time. But while all that is happening, Tobin Heath has just like gotten on her very fast
Tobin
horse.
Heath go.
Tobin Heath go. Yeah, she has like run into the gap behind Wendy Renard.
Tabine go?
Oh,
you're welcome.
So behind Wendy Renard and Marjorie's.
I'm so sorry.
Marjorie's all the way up there over the halfway line or like beyond the defensive zone anyway. So she knows there's just space to exploit in behind Renard and no Marjorie. So that's why Heath goes. And Morgan finds that. It's a really clever ball from Alex Morgan.
It is.
And Tobin Heath is away.
She is. And when I first saw this, I thought her touch was a little bit heavy and that maybe she should have squared to Sam Ewis.
Yeah. But I think Mbok.
She's Mbok, but also Mbok does a good enough job to kind of slide across and maybe just make Tobin Heath think about that pass just a little bit longer, so she ends up taking the touch. But also, Torrent, the right back for France, has also slid over. So I think like there's good covering runs from France. And so then when you look at that touch from Tobin Heath to take her wide, to take her to the touchline, it pulls Mbak all the way over. It pulls Torrent all the way in. And then when she ends up playing it back, I do think she's aiming for Sam Ewis.
Yes, me too.
But hits it a little bit behind her. But it leaves Megan Rapinoe wide open in the box.
Because Torrent is occupied with Ewis. You talked about that Heath first touch. I sort of agree with you that initially when you see the Morgan through ball, you think, oh, Heath's in on goal.
Yep.
But then she goes away from goal, she goes to the end line. I think in hindsight, I guess it's easy because we scored to have hindsight where you feel good about it, but I think she just makes a quick decision. And I like that because often you'll see Tobin Heath receive the ball and then she decides she's like going to try to send the defender this way or that way. This time she just thinks, all right, I'm just going to go for the end line.
I would extend that.
There's no tricks, is what I'm saying. There's no step overs, no attempt to fool and buck. There's just, all right, I'm going to gun it to the end line and cut it back.
But I would also say that there have been times in this tournament when we've seen Tobin Heath do exactly what she did, but then finish that with a shot from that angle. And she tries to put it on frame from a very tight angle. And I had that moment of like, oh, she's going to shoot this, isn't she? And when she goes to play the square ball back, initially I was a little bit like, ooh, that wasn't quite good enough because it goes behind Mewis. But then it goes to Rapinoe, and it made me appreciate Tobin Heath all the more.
Fair. Okay, you said you think that she's going for Mewis.
Yes.
I think I agree with you, but I'd like to hear the case of exactly why.
Sure.
Because it ends perfectly in Rapinoe's path. So there is an argument that maybe she was aiming for Rapinoe all along, right?
There is, but I think you're being generous there if you make that argument, because to watch it from
I'm being Tobin's advocate.
That's fair. To watch it from the reverse angle, which is like sort of, if you're thinking about it, the replay, sort of from where Rapinoe's watching this play happen.
Yeah.
When Heath last picks her head up, she sees Mewis kind of making a run towards where the ball ends up being played. And then Heath puts her head down, drives to the end line, crosses. And I'm going to assume that was based on like peripheral vision, that she kind of knows there's a white jersey in that area.
Yeah.
I know to play it back across to there.
Or you take a photo of it in your head and then you kind of extrapolate where Mewis will be in a few seconds. Is the two ways of doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I think she thinks it's going to go to Mewis. Maybe she underhits it. Maybe Mewis overruns it. Doesn't really matter though, because Megan Rapinoe is there, and it's just a calm finish. She still has defenders in front. Buhati runs across. I mean, isn't really able to make a good play on this one, but it's still, goalkeeper gets back into position that if Megan Rapinoe, gets too creative or takes a touch or side foots it a little bit too lightly or in the air, maybe it ends up getting picked out.
Megan Rapinoe went to the casino and won. All right, so 2-0 United States. What, 65th minute?
Yep.
It was a nervy...
All is well.
All is well for a while, but it was a nervy 25 minutes, right? Even though the defending looked good in the 5-4-1, I still had that feeling of, all right, host nation, talented team, 25 minutes, buckle up.
I'm not going to lie. I disagree a little bit.
Oh, really? Strangely, you were feeling good?
I wasn't, except that like as I was still really nervous. 2-0 is still 2-0. Easy for me to say. But I did start to see moments when France would, like the Madre one where she passes out of bounds, and then you see her and Les Sommer like have a little bit of words. There's one where a ball for Amandine Henry is overhit a little bit, and you see her like head up in frustration, and you just start to see those little familiar symptoms of like, oh, they're kind of giving up here. Like you can see the frustration, the fatigue, and then that goal.
And the pressure, right? You're the host nation, and you're one of the best teams in the world.
True.
You're not supposed to go out in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, you're right. And I should say, like, it was never any like giving up, like heads hanging low or anything like that. You could just see that like time is ticking away and the pressure's on, and that wasn't right. That wasn't the ball that was supposed to happen. Just that anxiety, frustration building up.
Damn it.
Yeah,
kind of
and so if anything, I thought we might see a red card from France just with the way they started to play. Yeah. But I think the goal in the 81st minute, I believe it was, the Wendy Renard goal. I think that brings France back into it, and kind of it's like smelling salts almost. That now they're all way back and up for it, and then I got real nervous.
It would probably be more like coffee.
Yeah, that could be
France.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true.
A chocolate croissant.
Is that what gets people going?
It's got some fast acting and slow acting carbs.
All right,
perfect.
You say so.
Anyway, let's talk about the Wendy Renard header.
Right.
So it's a free kick that the US wins. Is it Kelly O'Hara gives the free kick away?
Yeah. No, it's Tobin Heath. It's Tobin Heath.
Tobin Heath.
I believe so. It's Tobin Heath I think she gets like suckered into a foul or like a call by Majri. I think that's where this comes from.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree, but it's one of the US players. Gives a free kick away down the French left wing. Then we have Tine. And
you're right. The Majri suckering Tobin Heath in is 5 minutes later.
Yeah, I knew it was. I didn't want to embarrass you on air.
No, I appreciate it.
So it's Majri and Tine standing over the ball, which is important because it's like one's left-footed, one's right-footed, and we don't know which way this is going to go. Yeah. Right? And that is important because Wendy Renard gets behind the US defence when she heads this in, and no one is able to get goal side of her because we were playing that offside line.
I don't think so, Daryl. I think it's because Alyssa Nair kind of came out and then didn't come out. And why would you leave Wendy Renard open? It's so confusing.
Is that what the commentary team went for? Yeah.
No one seemed to notice that Sam Mewis had dropped 5 yards and kept everybody on side.
So that's what happened.
Yes.
Right? Sam Mewis broke the offside line. Everybody else stayed tight on the offside line. She dropped. And we went back, and the reason she dropped is the fake run or the fake take from Majri.
Yes.
Right? Majri runs up as if to take it left-footed, but then runs over the ball.
Yep.
But Mewis reacts as if Marjorie's taken it, so she drops when the line would have dropped had it been taken.
Yes.
Then Tina comes in behind Marjorie and right-footed, kind of just drives, it took a chipped cross. But because Mewis has gone, Renard can go, and the rest of the US defenders are then chasing her, right? No one is goal side to challenge her.
I'll say
that's why Renard has the free header.
It is. I'll say this, it's like a very minor kind of nuanced thing, but Mewis does do that. She drops way too deep, way too fast.
She bites. She's the only one that bites on the fake.
But she stays, and I kind of like that because so many times in this show we've criticized the defender for dropping too deep and then realizing like, oh no, I've broken the line. And then they go sprinting back the other way.
Trying to correct the mistake, but too late.
After the ball has been played, and now they're literally running in the wrong direction as the ball comes in. So I do think Mewis...
On the upside, they probably won't be in the shot when the goal goes in.
I do sometimes wonder if that's part of the plan. It's like, if I get out of here fast enough, it's not my fault. But I think Mewis turns and looks and recognizes, like, oh no, I'm flying through the air right now. But then instead of kind of running away, drops off, like she even drops off a little bit more and tries to put herself in a position to attack that ball.
Yeah.
But it's too well hit by Tina. And it is like perfectly placed on Wendy Renard's head.
Yeah. And Renard is really accurate with her headers, right? It's not just about being tall. She really, like, you give her a chance, she's mostly going to take it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great goal from France. I should say it's a lucky goal from France because you're absolutely right. It's Kelly O'Hara gets called for a foul on Amandine Henry, which I don't think was a foul. I think Amandine Henry fell over.
She kind of stumbled and O'Hara was like over the back of her, but I don't think it was a foul. So
I don't think so either. But it goes.
Maybe some karma happened with Kelly O'Hara later on. Then
might could be. But again, this is another example similar to what I was talking about with Tina playing in Gianni and Dunn makes the good defensive play. That if you make a mistake, France is that good of a team that they will punish you. And here the United States, I would say, makes the most obvious mistake they made all game.
The Mewis mistake?
Yeah. And
because the offside line was 100% perfect except for that one moment.
I believe they were offside 6 times. I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, you sure did.
All right, so let's talk about that one final moment that was terrifying for everyone.
Oh, yes. So it's Marjorie is running at Kelly O'Hara. She hits it left-footed cross. It hits Kelly O'Hara in the arm, and then nothing happens.
And nothing happens.
The ref does the arms down low, making waves. No, it wasn't a PK. I fully expected the ref to be touching it. VAR saying, hey, you might want to take a second look at this. Then the ref goes to the monitor and looks at it as like, oh, I think this actually is a penalty kick. This type of thing we've seen given, I don't know how many times, but multiple times throughout this World Cup. How does the US get away with this? How does Kelly O'Hara get away with this?
So here's my argument as to how she gets away with it. And then I'll tell you what I actually think. I think it's because Kelly O'Hara is in a defensive position. She's in a defensive crouch. She's sort of shaped to show Marjorie to the end line. So she's basically got her left side to Amel Marjorie, which means that she's crouched. Her arms are down to as you would do. And I think when that cross happens, even though her arm goes back a little bit, I think it's because she's sort of in it's a natural movement. And it's still just barely breaking the silhouette. So I think for the official...
Does the silhouette include your arms?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, but I'm thinking...
makes sense, right?
But I'm thinking literally from imagine a silhouette from the side, you might not be able to see her arm except for maybe the very bottom. So I guess that's what I'm thinking, and then I think the referee has a good vantage point and thinks of it more so as she doesn't change her body position at all. If anything, she ends up turning around and looking wait, what happened here? Because I think Kelly O'Hara is kind of thrown by it. So I think the official has the vantage point. There's an element of distance. I don't think she's intentionally making herself bigger. She's not moving her arm to block the ball. So I think that's
probably the key part, right? It's not like her arm moves to block the ball. It's just her arm is already down and there, and the ball hits it. But that's the argument for not giving it.
But if I'm going to be honest, I mean, we spent a lot of time watching that Rose Lavelle penalty against Spain, and people,
where she gets right down the calf, stamped on the calf.
And I think we concurred that it was a penalty, maybe a soft penalty, but we saw the contact. We felt like it was a penalty. I think this could have been a penalty. I think it very easily could have been called as a penalty because we've seen it called that way in this tournament. I think if it went to VAR, it might have been given because...
But they must have looked at it, right? I'm assuming that after this happens, the ref says no.
My only thought...
VAR's initial job is to go check, right? They at least would have done their own check, and then they notify... Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? They would check it, and then if they thought the referee needed to see it again, then they would tell her. But it seems like they checked it and thought, no penalty.
It almost makes me wonder if the referees at this stage of the tournament, or maybe because of the way the tournament has gone, have been told to sort of assert their authority a little bit more. Almost like you don't have to do VAR if you don't want to. As in if you're no, I saw it, I'm not looking at it again, it's not going to change it. Yes, you might show me a replay where it hits her hand. It's not a handball for me. I'm not looking at it. That's the only thing I can think as to why she doesn't end up taking another look at this, or why we don't get a pause while the VAR people like have their review. So I'm not really sure how this ended up not getting another look.
The only thing I can think that is different with this penalty versus all the other ones we've seen where the ball is fired at someone and it hits their hand, like say Aslani's penalty that she gives away against Sweden, is just that Kelly O'Hara's arms are down and not out at all. You know what I mean? Like, if you think of Aslani's arm, it's out to the side.
You're right. I mean, she's in a controlled position. Yeah,
so that has to be the... Like, and this isn't me arguing why it wasn't a penalty because I'm a US fan. It's me trying to reason out why VAR didn't say, yeah, you need to take a second look at this. And I think they might have looked at that. And maybe it's clear in their rules that if your arms are down and not moving towards the ball, that it's not a penalty kick.
Yeah,
right?
that could be.
Yeah,
that could be.
That's not for my argument. That's my guess. How about that?
All right.
Okay. Okay, so US gets away with that. There's still, 5 minutes to go plus 5 minutes of added time. The US does a magnificent job in this final 10 minutes. Kristen Press comes in, I think, is really good in terms of she's not there to try and make an impact and be all about Kristen Press. She makes a lot of moves that are, I'm not going to goal. I'm either playing a safe pass so we keep possession, or I'm going to take this to the corner so we can slow it all down.
Yeah.
Heath and Morgan do the same several times down the right wing. I would say it's a masterclass in killing the clock without doing anything illegal.
Yeah, because it's
not faking injury and lying down for 6 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and this is an analogy that not many people are going to get, but we just did our Richmond Kickers Weekly show, and we talked about a Kickers defender sort of getting overly focused on the physicality in a moment of trying to shield the ball and ended up conceding a penalty. This is the exact opposite of that example here. What Heath and Morgan do expertly is sort of they don't worry about the player who is coming in to foul them or knock them off the ball or whatever. They're 100% focused on keeping the ball and keeping it away from France to the extent possible. And you just start to see them do, because they're focused on what they're doing and not what France are doing, you see them do really smart things like, oh, you're going to run at me full speed? Well, then I'm just going to kick it at you and it's going to go off you. And now we have another 10 seconds to take this throw or 15 seconds.
And I'm not taking this throw quickly, by the way.
No, there was a lot of it's very important that another person take this throw, so we need to wait for while this person comes over and gets in position to take it.
Actually, weirdly, my favourite moment was, I can't remember if it's Morgan or Heath, one of them wins a free kick in the near the corner flag, and France are like ready to pounce on it as they take the free kick, and they just very slowly ask the ref, oh, can we get our 10 yards, please?
There you go.
Which you actually don't need because you know you're going to pass it short, but it kills another few seconds and it makes it harder for them to come over and get you.
But then they do the thing of like they fake as though the free kick's going to be taken, and both the French defenders come running, and then they're like, oh, you got to back them up again.
Yards,
like they're infringing. And then they take it short. The other one that I loved, because it's worth remembering, the World Cup is in France, so France are the home team.
It's worth remembering, if we were on the other side of this conversation, we would be mad about all this at the end.
I mean, I wouldn't be, because
or at least impressed, but frustrated.
I mean, it's gamesmanship. They're not doing anything. They're not diving. They're not going to the ground. They're not killing time. There was a few moments when I think the French crowd thought players were, but all of those seemed legitimate to me.
Lewis did dive, right? This is not at the end. This is I think in the first half. She definitely dove in the box trying to win a penalty.
16th minute. She
arguably should have got a yellow card for simulation because there was no touch and she went flying down. Yeah.
But I want to tell you,
or she should get new cleats.
My favorite moment of these final 5 minutes, she should probably get new cleats, was I say, like, France playing at home, thus you have to assume the French ball kids had been told, if they're losing, get that ball back and play as quickly as you can. And there's one where I think it was Kristen Press. The ball goes out of bounds. Like, she gets tackled, gets back up, ball kid throws her the ball, and she just, like very naturally kicks the ball back out of bounds and then continues, like, as though, like, I'm not taking it. I'm, like, going to pass it back for my teammate so she can take the throw. But definitely kicks it the wrong way and away from the ball kid as well, and then she continues her little jog. And it's gamesmanship. It's smart movements there to do enough that it seems like you're trying to play within the rules of the game while still maybe bending the rules a little bit there.
It underlines the US ruthlessness, which is like borne out by that stat of like 8 of 10 shots on target versus France's 5 of 20.
And that's where I want to end from, like, my points at least, is that when you're talking about the ruthlessness, I want to talk about Julie Ertz. Because
she has no ruth.
She does not. Going into this game, in our preview, I mentioned that one of my sort of like lingering concerns was Julie Ertz 1v1 defending, because I felt like we've seen her. The first goal is a good indicator. She just goes flying into stuff. She tries to make things happen. Yeah. But there are players who can exploit that and play very calmly around that. And I felt like Julie Ertz did about as good of a job as she possibly could have done of policing the midfield, of winning stuff in the air. She has one to start the second half where she's actively being fouled by, I think, Tine. And like as she's being pulled backwards and falling over, she's still outside of the foots, a through ball through for, I believe, Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah.
Or it might have been Sam Mewis. But
she's just offside, I think. But it's still a wonderful, wonderful pass as you're getting knocked down.
Yeah.
It speaks to her competitiveness and technique.
And
it's a combo.
And I think the other thing that speaks to her competitiveness and defensive technique is the fact that Tine was more or less anonymous in this game, in my opinion. She had a couple moments, but the one that like I really remember is Julie Ertz and Tine are battling for the ball. They kind of lock arms, and Julie Ertz almost does like a hip toss and gets called for the foul.
Yeah, it's like a judo move, right? It's like an Olympic judo.
And about 10 seconds later, referee misses this. You picked it up.
Yeah.
Tine just hits Julie Ertz in open play. Like, not punches
straight into her with her shoulder.
Yeah, she like shoulder charges her, knocks her over. Ertz gets up, looks at the referee and says, like, did you see that? But then continues to play. And I don't say that to say, like, oh, she's so tough, she gets back up. More so to say that France's creative number 10 was more focused on retaliating against Julie Ertz than making a play. She actively runs away from the ball to try to make that hit on Julie Ertz.
Yep.
And France end up losing possession. The United States goes the other way. It's that level of, like, physicality and like frustration that Julie Ertz brings to the opposition that I think is incredibly valuable to this team.
All right. I have nothing else to say about this game, but it's worth noting that now there is a semi-final, and it's the US women's national team against England.
You're going to cut your jerseys in half and sew them together?
I honestly have no idea how I'm going to feel or root or whatever in that game. It's going to be next Tuesday, July 2nd, 3 p.m. Eastern. I will say I think it will be a magnificent game because England play a sort of quite open, attacking, aggressive style, and the US does the same. And I think that's going to be like fireworks when they go up against each other. So genuinely, with no rooting interest, say England win that game. And the US doesn't end up.
Oh, we're living in fantasy land?
All right, cool. But just say like, and we don't end up. The US doesn't end up winning the World Cup.
Yep.
I still the players won't agree with this, but I would still say this game against France, because it was like, people talked about the quarterfinal that should have been a final. I think there's a lot of vindication for all the things we were worried about with the US going into this tournament, because the US team was proved right against France.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see your point. My only hesitation there is that it would work a little bit better if maybe they had one slightly better team in their group. Because otherwise it's sort of like beat Thailand, a very weak Thailand, obviously, beat a Chile team pretty convincingly, beat a Sweden team that was resting all their players, beat a Spain team that everybody thought they should have beaten, and then finally played against a good opponent and got past France. But if they had maybe just beaten like one more better team in the knockout round, maybe that's a bit more of an argument.
Yeah. And honestly, I might just take that all back. Because, okay, we have all these concerns about Crystal Dunn. And I said at the top of the show, questions have been answered. I think now she can defend against a player of Gianni's quality.
She's got to do Lucy Bronze, doesn't she?
She's got to do Lucy Bronze and Nikita Paris.
Ridley.
Right? That's a whole... I mean, we'll preview that game, obviously, but that's the next challenge for the US, is that England right side of Lucy Bronze, I think the best right back in the world, and Nikita Paris, not the best right wing in the world, but like she's up there and she's dangerous and she's someone who's got moves to go past you. Like, it could all go wrong against that combo, and suddenly Crystal Dunn has been exposed, and maybe we needed a more defensive left back. So I've just done a 180 within the space of 30 seconds.
All right.
But they've at least proved it once. They've got to prove it again, I guess. Yeah, and that's what they've done so far throughout their careers, right? That's why they're the 2015 World Cup champions.
That would make sense to me. Yes. I'm still just uncertain how I want to proceed when it comes to USA playing England. I'll have some plans for that game.
You'll have some plans?
I think so.
What do you mean?
Just ways to annoy you.
Oh, no. Can't we just enjoy the game?
I don't think so. No. Going to be a lot of Empire jokes. Going to be a lot of,
TV show?
No. Your faded Empire combined with your hilariously run government.
Have you taken a good look at Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands? Pretty nice places.
I can confidently say that I have not.
The jewels of the Empire.
Yeah.
The jewels of the Empire. All right, this seems like...
I thought that was Lucy Bronze and Nikita Paris.
I mean, we might... If we lose Gibraltar and the Falklands, then yes. This seems like a good point to end.
I think probably so.
So, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
God save Julie Ertz.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We will talk to you again very soon.
Megan Rapinoe, I went to the casino and placed my bets on you to win the World Cup, because I think that you deserve to, and I think it'd make you happy and the rest of the team too. Shouldn't fail to mention solid, crossing to the far stick. Megan Rapinoe, I went to the casino and placed my bets on you to win the World Cup, because I think that you deserve to, and I think it make you happy and the rest of the team too. Like the way you grab the mic, sang out a quick line, lay down a little Springsteen. And if you come back through Chicago, I hope I see you step out on the pitch and get yourself a hat trick. Megan Rapinoe, I went to the casino and placed my bets on you to win the World Cup, because I think that you deserve to, and I think it make you happy and the rest of the team too.